Ladies and gentlemen, let me start by telling you something simple but life-changing. Stop letting the opinions of people dictate the destiny God has designed for you. People will talk. Let them. People will doubt you. Let them. People will misunderstand you. Let them. Their opinion does not have the power to cancel the promises of God. You see, too many of us are stuck, not because we're not gifted, not because we're not anointed, not because we lack opportunity. We're stuck because we're too concerned about what people think. It's one of the greatest traps we fall into, letting what other people think about us shape how we see ourselves and how we move through life. Somewhere along the way, we start measuring our worth by applause, our decisions by approval, and our dreams by the limitations others put on them. But the truth is, people's opinions were never meant to define your destiny. They didn't create you, they didn't call you, and they surely can't control the purpose placed inside you by God Himself. When you understand that your destiny is divine, you stop looking sideways, you stop checking who's clapping and who's criticizing. You stop needing confirmation from people who weren't even in the room when God gave you the vision. The crowd didn't give you your gift, so why should the crowd govern how you use it? The sooner you realize that your calling is between you and God, the sooner you can move forward without hesitation, without apology, and without explanation. People will always have something to say. Some will doubt you because they doubt themselves. Some will criticize you because your courage reminds them of their own fear. Some will try to box you in because your freedom makes them uncomfortable. That's not your problem. That's not your burden to carry. You are not responsible for managing other people's insecurities. You are responsible for stewarding the destiny God gave you. Think about it. If David had listened to his brothers on the battlefield, he would have never faced Goliath. If Noah had listened to the opinions of the people mocking him while he built the ark, he would have abandoned the very assignment that saved his family. If Jesus had cared about pleasing the crowds, he would have never gone to the cross. Every great move of God in history required someone to turn down the noise of the crowd and turn up the volume of their faith. Destiny requires focus. It requires a relentless commitment to what God said, even when what people say sounds louder. The enemy knows that if he can't destroy you, he'll distract you, and one of his favorite weapons is public opinion. If you spend all your time trying to explain yourself, defend yourself, or win people over, you'll waste the precious energy you were supposed to use building what God told you to build. You were designed to live by faith, not by approval. You were made to be led by the Spirit, not pushed around by the crowd. You have to decide, are you going to be a prisoner to people's opinions, or are you going to be a pioneer of the purpose God placed inside you? Because you can't be both. Freedom begins when you stop asking, what will they think, and start asking, what did God say? Purpose becomes powerful when you value God's voice over man's voice. It doesn't matter if they laugh. It doesn't matter if they leave. It doesn't matter if they label you. None of that has the authority to stop what God started. Let them talk. Let them doubt. Let them misunderstand. Your assignment is not to be understood. It is to be obedient. And obedience will take you farther than approval ever could. People's opinions shift with the wind. God's promises stand forever. When you fix your heart on that truth, you'll walk different, talk different, believe different, and most importantly, you'll live different, no longer controlled by what others think, but free to follow what God has called you to do. There is a kind of strength that only comes when you stop looking to the crowd for direction and start leaning fully into the voice of God. Crowds are loud, but God is clear. Crowds are fickle, but God is faithful. When you trust the crowd, you get confusion. When you trust God, you get clarity. And in a world filled with opinions, distractions, and noise, clarity is a weapon you can't afford to live without. The crowd will change its mind about you in a heartbeat. One day they shout your name, the next they tear you down. One day they celebrate your victories, the next they criticize your process. Trusting the crowd is like trying to build your house on shifting sand, unstable, unreliable, and guaranteed to crumble when the storms hit. But when you trust God, you are anchored to something unshakable. His word, His promises, His character, they don't move with the trends. They don't adjust based on public opinion. They are the same yesterday, today, and forever. There is an inner freedom that comes when you realize you don't have to follow the crowd to be successful. You don't have to agree with the majority to be blessed. Most of the time, the path God calls you to walk will look nothing like what the crowd expects. The broad road has plenty of travelers, but it leads to destruction. It's the narrow road, the one fewer people are willing to walk, that leads to life. Trusting God sometimes means walking alone, standing alone, believing alone, but it also means standing firm under the hand of the one who never leaves, never forsakes, and never fails. When you trust the crowd, your decisions will constantly be up for negotiation. One opinion pulls you this way, another pushes you that way, and before you know it, you're exhausted and lost, chasing approval that will never satisfy you. But when you trust God, your decisions are rooted in a higher standard. Your movements are guided by conviction, not consensus. Your life becomes a reflection of faith, not fear. You move not because the crowd says go, but because God says, I have called you. Trusting God requires surrender. It means you give up your need to be liked. You let go of your desire to be understood. You stop living for likes, followers, and applause and start living for purpose, assignment, and destiny. It requires courage to stand when the crowd sits, to speak when the crowd stays silent, to believe when the crowd doubts. But courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the presence of trust. Trust that God knows what He's doing even when you don't see it yet. Trust that His plans are greater than your current circumstances. Trust that His ways are higher, His timing is perfect, and His promises are yes and amen. There is a reason God doesn't always show you the full picture. If you saw everything ahead, you might start trusting the path instead of trusting Him. God is not trying to get you to trust the process. He's trying to get you to trust the provider. The crowd will point you to shortcuts, to easier ways, to safer options. But faith doesn't always take the easy route. It takes the God route. Faith demands that you walk when it's uncomfortable, when it's unpopular, and sometimes when it's completely unseen. In the end, you have to decide whose voice will be louder in your life. Will it be the voice of the crowd, screaming 100 different opinions, or will it be the still, steady voice of God, calling you higher, deeper, further? One voice leads to temporary acceptance, the other leads to eternal purpose. You weren't made to fit in with the crowd, you were made to walk in covenant with God. And when you trust Him above all else, you will find that the very things the crowd promised but could never deliver, peace, joy, fulfillment, and victory, come alive in your life. Not because of who approved you, but because of who you trusted. One of the biggest barriers to stepping fully into your destiny is waiting for permission that you don't need. Too many people delay their calling, their assignment, their breakthrough because they are looking around, hoping someone will validate what God has already confirmed. But here's the truth, you don't need permission from people to do what God has already appointed you to do. You don't need to be voted in, endorsed, or applauded before you act on what heaven has spoken over your life. You already have God's approval, and that is more than enough. When God called Moses, He didn't call a committee meeting to get approval. He didn't ask Pharaoh's permission. When God anointed David to be king, He didn't check with David's brothers first, even though they looked more qualified. When God chose Mary to carry Jesus, He didn't gather the opinions of the village women or the religious leaders. God does not operate by human consensus. He operates by divine selection. When He calls you, He qualifies you. When He anoints you, He appoints you. And when He approves you, no human voice, no human system, and no human limitation can override His decision. You have to get to a place where you stop hesitating, second, guessing, and shrinking back because you're waiting for someone else to say it's okay for you to rise. You have already been authorized by the highest authority in existence. Heaven has already stamped its seal on your life. The purpose in you was planted by the Creator of the universe, and no human opinion is strong enough to uproot it. The danger of waiting for permission is that you allow fear to masquerade as wisdom. You start telling yourself that you're just being patient or cautious, but the real issue is you are more concerned about people's reactions than you are about God's instructions. If you keep waiting for the perfect moment when everyone is cheering you on, you'll miss the divine moment when God is telling you to move. God's timing is rarely about convenience, it's about obedience. Sometimes the door he opens looks too small, too strange, or too risky to the natural eye. That's because it's not designed to impress the crowd, it's designed to launch your calling. The truth is, the very people you are waiting on for permission might not even understand the size of what God is doing inside of you. They are looking at your history, but God is looking at your destiny. They are calculating your potential based on your past, but God is measuring you based on his power. Their limited view can never comprehend the unlimited work God has set in motion within you. So why would you hold yourself back for people who don't even have the capacity to see what God sees? The more you understand that God's approval is enough, the more boldly you'll walk. You'll stop explaining yourself to people who were never assigned to your journey. You'll stop trying to prove yourself to those who can't even comprehend your purpose. You'll stop watering down your gift to fit into spaces God called you to transform. You weren't created to blend in, you were created to stand out. You weren't called to conform, you were called to lead. There is a fire God put inside of you, and it's not waiting for permission to burn, it's not waiting for applause to ignite, it's not waiting for public opinion to validate it, it's waiting for your agreement with God's word. When you align with what he has already said about you, you become unstoppable. You walk with authority, not arrogance. You move with confidence, not compromise. You build, you create. You lead not because the crowd said you could, but because God already declared you would. There comes a point in every journey where you have to choose what's going to drive you, conviction or consensus. Consensus feels safer because it's the path of least resistance. It's the path where you blend in, where you move with the majority, where you do what is popular instead of what is purposeful. But the problem is, the majority is often wrong. Just because something is widely accepted doesn't make it right, and just because your conviction makes you the minority doesn't make it wrong. Conviction is the internal fire that keeps you aligned with what you know is right even when no one else agrees, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it costs you approval. The crowd will always push you toward compromise because compromise makes you easier to manage. Conviction, on the other hand, makes you dangerous to a world that thrives on fear and conformity. When you live by conviction, you are no longer moved by applause or rejection. You move because your spirit is anchored to something higher than public opinion. You move because you know what God said. You move because you understand that your mission wasn't given by a vote and it won't be taken away by a vote. It's easy to live by consensus if you have no vision. It's easy to blend in when you have no calling, but the moment God places something inside of you, a vision, a dream, an assignment, consensus becomes a trap. The truth is, not everyone will see what you see. Not everyone will understand what you're building. Not everyone will agree with where you're going, and they're not supposed to. God didn't show them the blueprint, he showed you. God didn't breathe that vision into their spirit, he breathed it into yours. Waiting for consensus is like asking for directions from people who have never been to your destination. If you live your life needing consensus, you'll spend your life shrinking your dreams down to the size of other people's comfort zones. You'll edit your calling to fit their expectations. You'll water down your assignment until it no longer looks like what God gave you, it looks like what the crowd can tolerate. But you were not called to be tolerated, you were called to be transformational. And transformation doesn't happen by following the crowd. It happens by standing on your conviction even when the crowd walks away. Conviction demands sacrifice. Sometimes it will cost you relationships. Sometimes it will cost you opportunities. Sometimes it will cost you the applause you thought you needed. But what you gain is far greater, the peace of knowing you stayed true to your purpose, the strength of walking in integrity, the reward of hearing well done. From the only one whose opinion really matters. Living by conviction means you'd rather be alone in obedience than surrounded in compromise. It means you're willing to be misunderstood, misrepresented, and even mistreated if that's what it takes to honor the call on your life. Consensus will keep you busy trying to please everyone. Conviction will keep you focused on pleasing God. Consensus is driven by fear of rejection, fear of criticism, fear of failure. Conviction is driven by faith that if God called you, He will sustain you. Faith that His plans are good even when the process is hard. Faith that your reward doesn't come from man, but from God Himself. When you choose conviction over consensus, you stop being a thermometer that only reflects the temperature around you, and you become a thermostat that sets the temperature. You become the one who shifts atmospheres, who breaks barriers, who pioneers paths. And while consensus might give you temporary applause, conviction will give you eternal impact. Every great move of God has always started with someone who was willing to stand on conviction even when it meant standing alone. When God puts His hand on your life, no amount of criticism, gossip, slander, or misunderstanding can cancel what He has ordained. People will always have something to say, but human voices do not have the power to override divine favor. God's favor is not fragile. It doesn't bend under pressure, it doesn't crumble under attack, and it doesn't need human validation to remain standing. When God decides to bless you, move you, raise you, or use you, He does it according to His will, not according to popular opinion. Criticism is a part of the process, but it is never the authority over the process. If you are going to walk in favor, you must learn to expect opposition. You must understand that some people will misunderstand you on purpose. Some will criticize what they can't control. Others will attack what they secretly admire but are too prideful to honor. That's not a reflection of your worth, it's a revelation of their insecurity. Favor will often expose what jealousy tries to hide. But even when the voices get louder, they cannot touch what God has already declared over your life. God's favor surrounds you like a shield. It's not just something you wear, it's something you carry. It opens doors no man can shut. It positions you in places you didn't even qualify for on paper. It brings opportunities that don't make sense to people looking at your resume. That's why criticism has no real power, because favor doesn't operate by man's system. It doesn't depend on who likes you, who votes for you, or who endorses you. It operates by heaven's system, and heaven's system is governed by grace, obedience, and divine purpose. When you let criticism distract you, you start fighting battles God never asked you to fight. You start spending emotional energy trying to explain yourself, defend yourself, or prove your worth. But favor doesn't need an explanation. It speaks for itself. The fruit of your life will eventually silence every lie, every rumor, every accusation. The results God brings through your obedience will outlast the noise of your critics. You don't have to argue when God is your defender. You don't have to retaliate when God is your vindicator. His favor is louder than any false narrative. Joseph's brothers criticized him, betrayed him, and sold him into slavery. But even in a pit, even in a prison, God's favor kept working. No human betrayal could cancel the dream God gave him. No false accusation could derail the destiny that was spoken over his life. At the right time, God's favor elevated Joseph to a place of influence, and the very people who tried to destroy him had to come back and ask for his help. That's the kind of favor you walk in when you trust God more than you fear human opinion. You have to settle it in your heart that criticism will come, but it will not conquer. Attacks will come, but they will not annihilate the anointing on your life. You might walk through seasons where it feels like everyone is against you, but if God is for you, it doesn't matter. His favor will carry you, protect you, elevate you, and establish you, not because you're perfect, not because you have everyone's approval, but because He delights in using the unlikely, the overlooked, and the underestimated. So you don't have to water down your assignment to make it more acceptable. You don't have to shrink your vision to make it less threatening. You don't have to compromise your identity to make yourself more palatable to people who don't understand your purpose. You were favored before they found a reason to criticize you, and you'll be favored long after their words fade into silence. Walk boldly, knowing that human criticism has no authority over God's calling. His favor is final, and when He opens a door, no voice on earth can shut it. Fear is the invisible wall that keeps too many people trapped in a life far smaller than the one they were created to live. Fear whispers lies that paralyze dreams, it shouts doubts that shrink visions, it magnifies obstacles and minimizes potential. But faith, real faith, is the force that moves you beyond fear. It is not that fear disappears, it's that faith grows bigger. Faith doesn't always silence fear immediately, but it gives you the power to move forward even while fear tries to scream at you to turn back. Faith isn't a feeling, it's a decision. It's choosing to believe what God said over what circumstances look like. It's choosing to take the next step even when your knees are shaking. It's deciding that you would rather risk failure walking in obedience than stay safe in a prison built by fear. Faith is an action word. It's not just something you have, it's something you do. It moves you from passive dreaming to bold doing. It shifts you from waiting for perfect conditions to trusting a perfect God in imperfect situations. Fear will always present logical reasons why you should wait, why you should stay small, why you should back down. It will sound convincing, it will sound responsible, it will even sound wise, but fear's wisdom is built on the assumption that God's promises might fail. Faith, however, operates on the certainty that God's promises are yes and amen. Faith says, even if I can't see the whole path, I trust the one who made the path. Fear says, what if it doesn't work? Faith says, what if it does? Every major move of God in your life will require you to confront fear head on, not avoid it, not wait for it to magically go away, but face it knowing that fear is often the clearest indicator you are standing at the edge of something significant. The enemy wouldn't bother you with fear if what you were about to step into wasn't important. Fear is often a confirmation, not a contradiction, that you are headed in the right direction. The greater the fear you feel, the greater the faith you will need, and the greater the glory God will receive when you move through it. When Peter stepped out of the boat and walked on water toward Jesus, fear didn't leave him. He stepped out while fear was still present. His faith moved him beyond the safety of the boat, beyond the logic of the natural mind, beyond the opinions of those still sitting inside the boat. Faith got his feet moving. And even when he started sinking, Jesus didn't condemn him, he saved him and used the moment to grow him. That's the beauty of faith. Even if you stumble, grace is there to catch you, and the growth that comes through stepping out is worth more than the comfort of staying in. You will never live the life God intended for you if you wait until you feel ready, confident, and fearless. Those moments of perfect comfort never come. What comes is a decision, to believe that the God who called you is greater than the fear that confronts you. To believe that the spirit inside you is stronger than any obstacle outside you. To believe that even when fear tries to paralyze you, faith will propel you. Faith makes you dangerous to the enemy. Fear tries to keep you predictable and passive. But faith makes you bold, unpredictable, willing to take risks, willing to trust God in ways that defy human logic. Fear builds walls, faith builds bridges. Fear keeps you small, faith calls you higher. And every time you choose faith over fear, you step closer to the destiny God prepared for you, a life not ruled by what scares you, but by who called you.